This is CBC Here and Now.
None of us sleep very well the night before. We're exactly the same as those children that are about to enter our building.
My favorite subject is social studies. Social studies? Okay.
Ready or not, students are returning to school, and this time they're back in the building.
Got some rivers or clean brooks around here. I'll go bring my water from them.
Our clean drinking water coverage continues. Tonight, we head to Pollard's Point, where some have been on a boil advisory for more than 30 years. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. Well, it is a big day for students and parents across Newfoundland and Labrador. For many, it's the first day of school. After a hot and sunny summer, students and teachers are adapting to a new back-to-class routine. Here and Now's Garrett Berry reports.
There's nothing quite like those back-to-school jitters.
I was thinking about, is it going to be fun? Is it going to be nice? Is it going to be really fun?
Even years later, the excitement still lasts.
This never goes away. I've been teaching and working in administration for over 30 years, and every single year we get the butterflies. None of us sleep very well the night before. We're exactly the same as those children that are about to enter our building.
They're dressed, snapped, and then walk to the school's front door. For so many, today marks the end of summer. And what great luck we've had.
Our little girl can't wait to start kindergarten. She's through the moon. So, and he's pretty excited to see his friends and everything like that. I think it was just such a good summer that they're just all going into it with a positive attitude.
But it's not a total surrender. Some are still holding on to fun in the sun.
Well, I have a pool in my backyard. It's still up. So my dad said I have like one more week, kind of, until he's going to take it down. And I've been in that with my friends a lot.
Even if they know it's a time of change.
I thought like my jeans because I'm grade 5 and from down, I always used to wear leggings, nothing else.
Okay.
And
So this year, jeans?
yeah.
Just like new year, new me kind of situation?
Yeah.
Truth be told, it's hard to find the words.
What do you think grade 1's going to be like?
Fun.
Fun. Why do you think it's going to be fun?
Playing.
Playing? What are you looking forward to playing the most?
Toys.
And while some are focused on their big day,
It's really busy and it's really crowded in the halls.
teachers are hoping that this day starts off a good year, where kids can stay in class and disruptions to the school calendar fall away.
Taking the lessons that we learned from these experiences and a lot of good things, a lot of good learning happened in terms of technology and those sorts of things. So taking what we learned and making it even better and hopefully being here on site with these wonderful students all year.
Garrett Berry, CBC News, Paradise.
Well, if you've forgotten what it's like to be back at school, all you have to do is ask the experts. We also visited JJ Curling Elementary in Corner Brook to see how students there feel about their first day back.
The good thing is that you get to learn new things in every grade, and I really like that. Usually every grade there's one new thing that you learn. And today we counted pennies. And I think there was 23 for the whole class, so I think there might have been 23 people. Feels good because you can see all your friends. I get to make friends and see them again and make new friends and just learn and play. I thought I would be learning a lot more in the first part of the day. We haven't done much schoolwork, but I'm liking answering the questions. My favorite subject is social studies. Okay. And then second place, it's science, and then third, it's math. I mean, I'm not that good at math, but not having to spend money to rent a book at the library. Gym, because you have to also pay money to go to a gym too. And yeah, basically a lot of things too. Doing fun activities with the whole school and all that. I love doing math. In class today, we've been playing around. Then we went to the playground. We played with the toys in the playground. We went back inside. Then we just finished writing our notes. I meet some good friends and teachers, and anytime I can do something, they always help me out. There's like a spinny thing that goes around in circles, same for the one over there. And then like you gotta play around and be with your friends all day.
That's pretty adorable. Well, last night we brought you to Branch, St. Bride's, and Cartwright. 3 of the 160 or so communities advised to boil their water. The province is asking people to rethink their drink and avoid sugary beverages like juice and soda. But how accessible is clean drinking water? Here and Now's Troy Turner brings us to Pollard's Point tonight, where parts of that community have been under a boil order for 35 years.
Giles Cove is a popular spot in the community of Pollard's Point. With a year-round natural spring, this is where many residents get their drinking water, and for good reason. Parts of the town have been on a boil water advisory since January of 1987.
Not a lot of complaints with people that come to us and say we need to get off the boiler. People have accepted. I guess after so many years, you sort of say, accept what it is.
Pollard's Point, located in White Bay, has a population of fewer than 300 people, down from its peak of about 650 in the 1980s. Davis says most residents these days are retirees. Raising fees would be difficult.
The vast majority of people in our community are on a fixed income, so the option of raising service fees are not there. And so to maintain a system with what we do charge is a challenge, and we can only maintain. We really can't improve. Sometimes our improvements are a necessity, so we save a few dollars to make those necessary improvements. But other than that is just try to maintain status quo.
Clarence Pittman will use tap water to put ice in his cooler, but finds his drinking water in nature.
Usually I'll go to the spring in Giles's Cove.
Okay.
If not, I got some rivers or clean brooks around here. I'll go bring my water from them.
He's a lifelong resident of Pollard's Point and has witnessed the community's population trickle away.
I know they don't have a lot of money to work with, with the limited people there.
We show our income, we show our expenses, and I guess by doing so, people can understand what's in our pockets. And I guess I think by making people aware of what our dollars and cents are that we do have, they can understand why there's things we can't do.
For communities such as Pollard's Point, the option to get away from using a spring such as this one for their drinking water doesn't really exist at the moment because of financial limitations. Davis did say, however, the local service district plans to maintain and upkeep their existing infrastructure, providing maintenance where needed. He's hoping other levels of government may be able to help beyond that in the future. Troy Turner, CBC News, Pollard's Point.
Well, for all the young young folks in this province who had to go back to school, welcome back. I always look forward to going back to school, and one of the telltale signs that summer is over is the start of school, and also this nonsense. So Ashley takes a few days off, and what do we get stuck with? A frost advisory. As you can see, it's basically anything west of Central, except if you look down here, I'm sure the fine folks in Burgeo, Ramia, Grey River, and Francois, they are going to escape it, but everybody else, you're under a frost advisory. It's not a frost warning. So a frost advisory means the temperatures could dip down between 5 and go as low as 2 degrees. So everybody else outside of this, you're outside of that frost warning, but it's basically everywhere from Port aux Basques up the Northern Peninsula into Central, Green Bay, White Bay. I could list them all, but you can see the map and that's it. Now there is good news. These low temperatures are going to get higher tomorrow, but we'll talk about that in the next hit coming up. Carolyn?
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, the province will pay out nearly $13 million to victims of sexual abuse that happened at several provincial youth facilities between 1973 and 1989. The CBC's Malone Mullen has the details, but first, a warning to viewers. Some will find the details of this story disturbing.
It was a scandal that spanned nearly 2 decades and 3 institutions. Now, a class action lawsuit has awarded victims $12.5 million for their suffering. The provincial Supreme Court last week approved the settlement for the victims who attended one of 3 facilities for young offenders and kids in care from 1973 to 1989. The decision says one of the plaintiffs was sexually assaulted by 3 different staff members while in the care of a girls' home. Another plaintiff accused a priest at a boys' home in Whitburn of taking him to a cabin, drugging him, and then sexually assaulting him. A third plaintiff said he was sexually assaulted many times by 2 guards at the Whitburn school in 1974. The sexual abuses included molestation, beatings, and rape, according to lawyer Lynn Moore. The settlement also includes $250,000 earmarked to publicize the case so that others may come forward and make their own claims. Malone Mullen, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the province plans to make a public apology to those victims. Ahead, I'll speak with lawyer Lynn Moore about why the decision was made to go the class action route. She also has advice for other potential victims. That's coming up in about 30 minutes on Here and Now. Well, here's the latest COVID-19 update for the province. 5 more people have died in the last week due to the virus. 3 of those people were 80 years of age or older. 1 person was in their 70s and 1 person was in their 50s. The number of people in hospital due to COVID-19 has dropped significantly from 11 last week down to 3. No one is currently in critical care. Meanwhile, a virologist says he hopes a new version of the vaccine will do a better job at preventing you from getting COVID.
I'm hopeful that with a better match for the between the vaccine and the circulating variants, I'm hopeful that you'll get a longer duration of protection from infection. So you'll have a longer period where you just won't be able to get infected. But there's no guarantee.
We'll hear more from Rod Russell about the bivalent vaccine. That's coming up in about 20 minutes on Here and Now. Well, now to a story from Labrador. It's being called a culture club, taking young people back to the land and back to their roots. The program also teaches youth how to live traditionally in the heart of the big land. Here Now's Heidi Adder takes us there.
This is where they're headed, about a 30-minute boat ride from Sheshashit Innu First Nation. 15 young people will camp and hunt there, just as their Innu ancestors did.
The highlight for me is, youth are so interested in, the activities and sleeping in the tent. And I think that, we should get back into that, more. And it's healing. It feels like being in here for these past couple nights. It feels like it's your body and your mind is healing. It's medicine, being in the country.
They're learning how to catch food and how to cook it. It's a lot of work, but they're also carving out time for music and fun. This is a 5-day pilot program, but many say they do it again.
Being out on the land is really incredible.
Some are fishing for the very first time and sleeping in a tent. Shibu Panashaway has been teaching the group guitar. Reconnecting with his culture and with music, he says it's not just the young people getting something out of it. It's helping him too.
It keeps the tradition alive so that they don't forget where they come from, so they don't forget that they're Innu. Because being Innu means a lot, Because when I was young, there wasn't a lot of stuff going on like this. To have it now, I'm really grateful because the kids really enjoy it.
Jack Panashaway believes land-based learning is critical. They're reintroducing culture and history to a younger generation.
Colonization, assimilation has, had a really impacted the Innu people, and giving a little bit and showing that, there's a better way of doing things and a better way of life. I think it's really, really important that we keep our Innu-ness alive and promoted in a way that's so that the young guys that are coming around the corner can experience a little bit of the flavor of what our fathers and our grandparents had lived in. Because this is actually the root, right? This is most of the Innu people used to would have camped here.
This week-long program is a pilot to see how it would go. Panashaway and Michelle hope to see more cultural camps in the future for Sheshashit youth. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
Well, two longtime friends from Bay Roberts are now multi-millionaires. Yes, Doug Ellsworth and Lawrence Russell received their check today for $15.6 million. They won the Lotto 649 jackpot on August 27th. The men have been friends for more than 3 decades, but they only started playing the lottery together 3 years ago and have used the same numbers since then. They plan to use their winnings to help their families, but they also have some specific plans in mind.
I always had a dream to drive across the country, sort of thing, from the East Coast to the West. So I'm going to look for an RV.
Wow.
And do it in style.
I never thought I'd ever use the word COVID. But today, because of COVID, I haven't been able to see my family for 3 years. So it's come home year for my family. So I'm planning a reunion so we can bring the family back together.
Like imagine a BMW motorcycle, the Boxer engine.
A convoy of French cars cruise across the border into Labrador City. That story is ahead.
True story, my stepdad Tom owned a Citroen that we used to ride around on. I'm not sure where it is now. I think it's in Vancouver, but you don't care about that. You care about the weather. I'm going to have the temperatures coming up tonight and tomorrow and some hurricane news coming up after the break.
Time for a look at the weather. And Jeremy, you have a good warning for all of those gardeners out there?
Advisory.
Right. Advisory.
If I say warning, then people are like, Jeremy Eaton said it was a frost warning. It's an advisory.
Yes.
So.
Well, it's good to know for gardeners to like cover their plants, bring in some plants if you're in the affected areas.
If you're in the affected areas, and we're going to look at the affected areas right now, but keep in mind it's just an advisory, and that means like there's chances of patchy frost. But just take a look at this map. So if wherever you live is not on this map, I don't really think you need to worry about much. But as you can see, it's basically Northern Peninsula, mainly Northern Peninsula East, all the way down to Port aux Basques, into Central, Green Bay, White Bay, et cetera, et cetera. You can see the map there. Conegra Peninsula, you're all on there. It'll all be good. So basically, like Carolyn said, just keep an eye on it. If you have some plants and you want them to survive, you might want to take them in. But that's the good news. After like the hottest summer we've had in St. John's, Ashley gets all the glory for the high temperatures. Jeremy shows up and he gets the frost advisory. Hence, what I wrote, really? Anyways. Let's take a quick look at what was going on in the rest of the weather here today. These are today's highs. Let me get out of the way so you can see. The fine folks in Labrador West might get upset. Labrador Best these days when you see these temperatures coming. But your 20 degrees in Labrador, that was the hot spot. 20 in Port aux Basques as well. So it was a pretty nice day. A little bit chilly start, a little bit wet here on the Avalon, especially this morning, as you saw in some of those pieces that Garrett Barry did. A lot of rain there as the kids were going to school, but welcome back to school, kids. Now, let's see, what do we got here for tonight? So there is drizzle that's going to happen along the Avalon Peninsula up into Gander and in the Bonavista Peninsula as well, but no real accumulation. As you can see, it's going to drop down to 6 degrees there in Marystown, 9 in Port aux Basques, and 6 up in St. Anthony. Now, if we look up into Labrador, it's going to be a lot clearer up there. There's a bit of cloud cover here in Labrador West, but the temperatures are a little bit chillier. As you can see, it's going to be 4 degrees in the Straits. Now, that could drop down to 2 because they're part of the frost advisory that's coming. Now, let's take a quick look at anything that's coming along. I do have some hurricane news, but we'll get into that in the long range because it might not affect us and it's not till the weekend. So no point in talking about the weekend when today's only Wednesday. So basically, as you can see, there's a little bit of rain that's going to come across into Labrador City tomorrow, and that could bring a couple millimeters, but we'll get into that right now. So, as I said, that there's shower activity going to happen on the Avalon Peninsula, and that's going to continue overnight and into tomorrow. As you can see there, Placentia, St. John's, Fairyland, Bonavista, Grand Fairyland, Bonavista, Clarenville. I keep thinking I said it wrong in my head, but it sounds wrong, that's all. You know, like when you spell a word and it looks wrong? That's what it felt like when I just said Fairyland. Anyway, so as you can see, that rain, but it's not really going to accumulate to much, but it's going to be drizzly like it was today. And as we move into Central, you can see those temperatures are higher. 16, 18 in Grand Falls, Windsor, 12 up in Twillingate. Now, the frost advisory affected the West Coast, but as I said, man, low lows, high highs. So it's going to drop down tonight, but then it's going to be suns out, guns out here. Port aux Basques, Stephenville, Corner Brook, Grossmore, 19, 19, 19. I feel like we did this last night. I had to double check the numbers because that's what we had last night there as well. So it's going to be a nice day there. And as we move up to the Northern Peninsula, you're looking at a lot of sunshine. This was all frost advisory tonight, but sunshine tomorrow. And the same goes for most of Labrador, except up in the north in Nain and Churchill Falls and Labrador City. You're going to get a bit of rain. You'll probably get maybe 2 millimeters in Labrador City, but other than that, it's going to be looking like a pretty nice day compared to, not compared to today, because today wasn't that bad, depending on where you were. And now we're just going to take a look now. There is a little bit of activity coming through Labrador into Friday, but it's not really, there's not a lot of accumulation that's going to come with this. There's going to be a fair bit of cloud cover, a little bit of fog, patches of rain, but overall, it's looking like it's going to be a pretty good rest of the week. We're going to get into the long-range forecast because there is a hurricane coming. Hurricane Earl is down by the Caribbean islands. It's going to make its way up here, and it probably won't impact Canada very much, especially us up here in the North Atlantic. But we'll talk about all of that and more coming up at the end of the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, road trips with friends can be a lot of fun, but a road trip in vintage French cars can certainly capture people's attention. And that's what happened when a group traveling through Quebec and Labrador recently made a stop in Labrador West. Here Now's Daryl Din got to visit with them.
The convoy of Citroen cars started in Baie-Comeau, Quebec, and took the highway to Labrador. I met up with them as they crossed the border into Labrador City.
Well, it was started off as a sort of a fantastic idea of my friend Gaëtan Saint-Arnaud who is up for any kind of adventure. And he said, all right, who would like to go and run the Trans-Labrador Highway with me? So I put my hand up, because I'll do anything crazy like that. And that's how we're here. It's been a fine adventure.
That adventure is a 16-day trip around Quebec and Labrador, stopping at most towns and taking in the sights and sounds.
So in retirement, he's playing with his de chevaux and meeting the people just like I am. So we have a good time in the group. There's 8 people, 4 cars.
And why does the Citroen hold such a special place for the group?
Well, it's kind of a unique phenomenon, the Citroen. It starts off just as an attempt to build the cheapest possible car. And at the time, early post-war years, everybody was desperate for a car because you couldn't buy a car, you couldn't afford it in the Depression, and you couldn't get a car during the war. So there was a lot of pent-up demand. So we see the emergence of the de chevaux in France, the Volkswagen Beetle in Germany. The flat glass makes it cheap. The canvas roof was there to make it cheap too, lightweight. The engine is just a 2-cylinder, flat twin, horizontally opposed cylinders. Like imagine a BMW motorcycle, the Boxer engine.
As the group toured around, they gathered crowds wherever they parked.
It's pretty cool, yeah. It's pretty small.
And like any intrepid reporter, I had to see what it was like on the road, especially going up hills.
Attention, Nicole. Attention, Cap.
When you go up a hill, you gear down, just like the big trucks. And you're in the climbing lane, and you might be a truck behind you and a truck ahead of you, but you go at that speed, grind your way up the hill till you're over the top. It can climb any kind of a hill, but at a certain speed.
According to their plans, they're due to arrive in Red Bay today. To follow the rest of their trip, you can visit their Facebook page, Expedition 51 en deux chevaux. I might just be joining them for the rest of the road trip. For CBC News, I'm Daryl Din in Labrador City.
There's a new version of the COVID vaccine, but what makes it better? We'll talk with a professor of virology and immunology about what you need to know about the bivalent vaccine coming up. There's a new vaccine in town. Health Canada has approved a bivalent vaccine that's designed to better protect against the current strains of COVID that are circulating. The first doses have started arriving, but Newfoundland and Labrador hasn't announced how it's going to use the vaccine just yet. But what makes this vaccine better? Well, Rod Russell is a professor of virology and immunology at Memorial University. So, Rod, break it down for us. All the vaccine that we've been receiving so far has all been based on that original strain of COVID. So what makes this new vaccine different?
Right, so we're calling this the bivalent vaccine. And the idea is that, as you said, the first vaccines that came out had the spike sequence from the original Wuhan sequence that was originally discovered back in early 2020. So as we've gone on now through the pandemic and these variant after variant, have shown up, the virus has changed, right? The spike sequence has changed more and more with each variant to a point now where we've got Omicron and subvariants of Omicron. And basically there's a lot of changes in the sequence of, the virus, the spike protein that's on the virus we're facing now compared to the original. So what you have now is a vaccine that has they've split it 50-50. So you've got some of the original Wuhan sequence in the vaccine, but you've also got an equal amount of an Omicron. So the BA.1 version of Omicron is also in there now.
Now, with Omicron circulating, we found that the original vaccine has been good at protecting us from getting very sick, but not very good at protecting us from just getting COVID in the first place. So does this vaccine change that?
Well, no, yet. It's early to say because we haven't seen the data. I haven't seen the data yet. I'm hopeful that with a better match for between the vaccine and the virus circulating variants, I'm hopeful that you'll get a longer duration of protection from infection.
And I think a lot of people are wondering, okay, if I'm eligible, like if I'm 50 plus and I'm eligible for a booster now, should I get one that is maybe still the original version of the vaccine, or should I hold out and wait for one of these new bivalent vaccines once they become available?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer because I think the answer may be different for different people, right? The first factor you have to consider is your own vulnerability, right? If you're a high risk person of getting severe disease, if you're immunocompromised, if you're frequently in contact with immunocompromised people, well then, we don't know right now how long we'll have to wait. We know these vaccines are approved, or the new bivalent vaccines approved, but I don't know when it will actually be available. And I assume it'll be an age-based approach, so we'll probably have it available to the older people first. So for someone, in the 50-year age range, who knows, right? It could be a month, could be 2 months before they can have access to that.
I guess vaccine manufacturers are a bit like, the virus is a bit like a speeding bus, and they're always trying to chase after it to catch up. The version that was just approved is based on BA.1, so the original Omicron. Most of the cases we're seeing now are BA.4, BA.5. Pfizer has submitted a newer version to kind of leapfrog this and would then be better tuned to the most recent version. So do you have some hope is that going to be a better vaccine? What do we know?
Would think so. I think any vaccine that's a closer match to the current circulating strains should work better against the current circulating strains. That makes sense, right? Of course, by the time the BA.4 or 5 vaccine is available, there could be a BA.6, 7, right? We're always going to be a little bit behind, but you have to be hopeful, right? That the closer the match to the vaccine and the current strain, the better your immune response should be against the current strains.
We're seeing the message from the federal government shift. We saw last week them now saying if it's been more than 6 months since your last shot, you need to get a boost. So moving away from a specific number to just sort of the 6-month interval. We need to see how Newfoundland and Labrador implements that, because right now if you're under 50, you're not eligible for those additional shots. But is it realistic to expect everyone twice a year to keep getting shots, especially when a lot of people haven't even gotten a third shot, let alone a fourth or a fifth?
Yeah, I don't know. With the short interval of protection from infection that we've seen, this 2 to 3 months after vaccination or infection, the fact that you can get infected again pretty soon after, we quickly realized you couldn't possibly vaccinate people 4 times a year. Nobody would want that, and honestly, no public health system could manage that, I don't think. 6 months would be more feasible if necessary, and of course that'll depend on epidemiology. But I think we'd all like to see an annual shot. at the worst, we'll say. We also have to remember that the long-term protection from severe disease is still there. So, you're only going to boost frequently if you're trying to keep actual cases of infection low. And with most people, not having, not ending up in hospitals now with infection, most people having mild infections, an annual shot might be good enough. So I think the 6-month thing right now might be a move toward going for longer intervals between vaccinations and boosters. But again, it's going to depend on epidemiology, and it's fall and kids went back to school today. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few months.
Well, Rod Russell, I appreciate you joining us and sharing some of your insights. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Returning now to a story we brought you earlier in the show, the province will pay out nearly $13 million to victims of sexual abuse at several youth facilities in the province. And before we get started, just a warning, we will be discussing some of the disturbing details of this case. Joining me now is the lawyer that represented the victims, Lynn Moore. So first of all, Lynn, can you talk about how this case came about?
Sure. Lawyers at Morris Martin Moore had been representing individuals in cases cases against the province for sexual abuse that they suffered while resident in these institutions. And we became aware through those prior cases that this was a much larger problem. So we began the hunt for people who were willing to act as representative plaintiffs, and we found those four brave souls. One has since passed away, and they agreed to act in that capacity, and we launched the lawsuit in 2017. In 2019, we were certified as a class action, and then we were set to go to summary trial in March of this year when we reached a settlement agreement with the province.
Can you tell us what the case was about?
Well, the case was about children who were either neglected in their homes and brought to these institutions, or they ran afoul of the law and they were sentenced to these institutions. And in these institutions, they were supposed to be nurtured and cared for and comforted and provided with guidance and training to allow them to succeed. And many of them were brutally and awfully sexually assaulted. The sexual assaults ran the complete gamut of sexual activity, from being forced into detention cells with no clothing on, to being groped, to being raped. It was a brutal experience for many of the class members, and they were very deeply damaged, many of them.
How difficult was it for them to come forward and to retell and essentially relive that experience?
Well, it was very difficult, and these people were teenagers, most of them in the 70s, so they've waited a long time to share this story. I was in contact with one woman over Facebook messages for about a year. She just couldn't bring herself to pick up the phone or to come in. Talking about it brings back the memories and the flashbacks and the nightmares. So we're very grateful and really in awe of the courage of the representative plaintiffs and the class members who've reached out to us. And we're very happy that the settlement agreement allows for the class members and the representative plaintiffs to choose which path they want to take. They can sign a simple declaration saying they were there and they were sexually assaulted and not provide any further details if they're unable to provide those details, or they can fill out a longer form and then possibly have an interview with a person that we view as an expert in the area of sexual abuse and who will conduct trauma-informed interviews with them. And it is a much better process for survivors than the traditional court process, which can be quite draining, and cross-examination and things that require multiple retellings of their trauma, and we're hopeful that this process will be much better for the survivors. The settlement agreement allows for a $250,000 noticing program, so basically advertising so that people are aware that they can make their claim, and they have 1 year after the appeal period expires to make those claims. So we're hoping to reach, everyone that was in there and that was sexually assaulted, and let them get some access to justice.
And are there specific facilities that are included in this class action?
Yes, so the facilities went by a bunch of different names, but we refer to them as Whitburn and Pleasantville. They were boys' schools, boys' homes and girls' homes, and sometimes they were called training schools. And for a while, the Pleasantville facility was located in Torbay because the Pleasantville one had burned down. So anyone who was in there between 73 and 89 in either Whitburn, Pleasantville, or in the Torbay, which I believe at the time was the Torbay Rec Center, was where they housed the young people when the Pleasantville school burnt down.
And the province is planning to issue an apology on this, right?
Yes, so we were very pleasantly surprised when we saw the government's brief of fact and law that was submitted to the court, to see that the government is going to make an apology in the House of Assembly. A senior member of government is going to deliver an apology, and when people have been sexually assaulted, they really want two things to happen. They want it to stop, and they want an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. So the money is part of that acknowledgement, but the apology is important to people for their healing.
Lynn Moore, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
And Angela Parker Brown has just finished her first book. It's called Writing with My Eyes, Staying Alive While Dying. It's about her journey with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, as it's commonly called. That made her writing process different than any other author. Colleen Jones has that story from Truro.
Name is Angela Parker Brown, and I am the author of Writing with My Eyes.
Since her ALS diagnosis 4 years ago, Angie Parker Brown's world was turned upside down. She struggled with all the emotions of denial and anger, till finally acceptance of getting a disease with no cure.
Was a roller coaster of emotions.
When she started writing about everything she's learned on this roller coaster ride, it was therapeutic. Then when Pottersfield Press decided to print her book, knowing it could help others, it gave her a new purpose.
Although we have been given this diagnosis, we can continue to live as best we can.
Angie's written this book differently than most authors. It is one slow letter at a time.
Aligns with my eyes.
The machine, known as Toby, makes it happen. She jokes it's her best friend. The eye gaze technology allows her to move her eyes to each letter until the word is spelled out.
Once in writing mode, the hours flew.
She hopes others find courage in the wake of news you don't want to hear. She also hopes her 12-year-old twin daughters, Parker and Paris, learn about persevering. Her sister Bev is always keeping vigil, watching from the kitchen table. I call her over.
God has a bigger plan on Angie's life than this ALS. To be able to write a book the way she has done it, so eloquently, it's just amazing. It really is amazing to me, and it's heartwarming.
Even the Queen has learned about Angie. She was presented with a Jubilee Diamond pin for what she's doing, showing strength and grace with her ALS diagnosis.
Life.
And trying to help others by telling her own story.
One day at a time.
Colleen Jones, CBC News, Truro.
Wow, just incredible. Well, in national news, the Bank of Canada has raised its key lending rate by 3/4 of a percentage point. It pushes the interest rate up to 3.25%. Today's hike is the 5th consecutive interest rate increase this year. The central bank has moved aggressively to try to cool the economy and tackle high inflation, and it warns that more increases are likely. It blames the high inflation across the globe on supply chain disruptions, the pandemic, and the war in Ukraine. Painting the Newfoundland pony. Tomorrow on the St. John's Morning Show, you'll hear about an artist from New Brunswick who road tripped across the island to make some art of the endangered animals. And on Labrador Morning, the Nanook Centre in Hopedale has a new music room. It will allow youth to practice their skills and also provide a space to socialize and take care of themselves. Tune in tomorrow morning. Well, in the cold, dark, and deep waters of Gander Lake, a team of divers has confirmed the underwater location of a Second World War airplane that crashed there in 1943. A group of local experts made the discovery using meticulous research and 3D sonar scanning. On Monday, the 73rd anniversary of the crash, a diver led a team to document the wreckage. She shared the story and the pictures with our colleagues at CBC's As It Happens.
Gander Lake is very dark, and it just absorbs all of the lights. And at about 120 feet of depth, I saw the landing gear with what appeared to be fully inflated tires. So the entire plane is upside down with, wheels sticking up basically, and it's kind of crumpled. But other than that, the things that we saw underwater are remarkably well preserved. We did manage to document some important spots on the wreckage that would help us to determine that this was indeed that B-24 Liberator. So we were looking for markings and writing on the wings. We were looking for sort of an emblem on the stabilizer section of the tail, which we found. But we also found, 50 caliber machine gun, a lot of ammunition rounds, some instrumentation. So there are many fully intact items just there within the wreckage. Our goal as the team from the Royal Canadian Geographical Society was to document the wreck, survey, take pictures and photographs. We have a team of very experienced divers that were able to take on the challenge, and we're donating those images and the information to the Newfoundland and Labrador Shipwreck Preservation Society and local museums so that the story can be told. And these are war graves, and we can't forget the horrors of World War II. And I think there are many Canadians that don't know this part of our history.
It's pretty cool.
I was just saying that many Canadians don't know that. I was like, I definitely did not know that. But,
pretty cool research, yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
So you come here often? I've been dying to make that joke, and I've been dying for years, and I made it, and I apologize. Anyways.
So let's talk about the weather, something else that's kind of cool, at least for some parts of the province.
Yeah, it is, and I know people are going to make fun of me on social media for this, but we have to talk about the frost advisory, because if I don't talk about it, someone's going to be like, Jeremy Eaton didn't tell me. I don't know why I refer to myself in the third person, but Jeremy didn't tell me about the frost advisory. But there is a frost advisory, not a frost warning. I'm just going to back out of this one. And so if you could take a quick look here at this map for the third or fourth time, I can't remember what it is, but I'm going to give you new information, I promise. So study this. If you live in this blue area, frost advisory, not a frost warning. But like I said, all along the coast here, the temperatures are going to go low to high tomorrow. But there is an interesting development, and I had to call our friends at the Gander Weather Office, run by Environment Canada, to learn a little bit more. But what we're, there we go. So there is the tropical tracker. There is a hurricane that's currently, as you can see here, this is near Bermuda at this point, the Caribbean islands, and it's going to start to pick up a little bit of steam. Now, this was a tropical storm overnight, but this morning it was classified as a hurricane. So as you can see, some of these wind speeds are going to pick up as it moves into Friday, 195 kilometers an hour, and that's going to move, man, how do I not know how to do this properly? So I set, you can pause it, and there we go, I got to figure it out. So, as you can see here, it's going to get faster Friday afternoon, 3:30, 2:50, and you can see where this is going. You can see why I'm telling you this, because as it moves up, it's going to come closer to the coast of Nova Scotia and the coast of the island of Newfoundland. Saturday into Sunday. Now, what our friends at Environment Canada told me today when I chatted to him on the phone, my good buddy Blair, he was saying it could cause some wave action here, but you could also see a fair bit of rain there in the Grand Banks area. So now this is all going to happen there around, I think this is by this point. There we go, the time should come in. There we go, we're looking, if you look down here, it's going to be Monday, it's going to make its way off. So it's even in the span of when I made this graphic about 3 hours ago with the help of Carolyn Stokes to now, this already moved off quite a bit, so it's not really going to impact us as much, but it's a hurricane and it's hurricane season, as Ashley told you about last week, so we had to take a quick look at it. So let's take a quick look ahead into Friday. So look at that. There's a lot of sun icons, which is always when you do weather and you fill in doing the weather, it's always good to be able to show this on Friday, especially a long weekend after a shortened week because a lot of people had it off because of Labor Day. But you're looking at temperatures that are going to reach 21 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, 21 in Corner Brook. Now, if you take a quick look at the future tracker, it's going to come here, and a bit of precipitation will move its way there up through Labrador, as you can see a little bit down there along the Avalon Peninsula. But like all is well, it's not going to be a lot of accumulation. And I just wanted to see if, here, let's take a quick look at the long range. And this is when I can just back out a bit. Man, I'm a terrible dancer. So as you can see here, if we look at St. John's, the weekend's looking nice, 16, 16, 21 degrees. And that's all good. That's all good. Now, and that's 22 there Monday coming in. Now, let's take, oh my gosh. See, I did it again. I got to learn how to press buttons. See, I'm pressing the wrong button. There we go. Back on track. So look at that into central Newfoundland there. You're looking at 18, 19, 25 degrees on Sunday. Now, that could dip down a bit because it was 29 yesterday. But anyway, so just keep an eye. It's still going to look good. There's going to be a bit of cloud, but there's going to be not a lot of precipitation, as we just saw in the future tracker. And let's take a quick look up at what's going on in Labrador. 27 degrees in eastern Labrador on Saturday. 24 in Labrador West on Saturday. Looking like it's going to be a nice weekend all across the province, and I will take full credit for that. Let's take a quick look here, Carolyn, at our picture of the day. Sandbanks Provincial Park in Burgeo. This picture was sent to us by Donna Warren. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I don't think so.
I used to go when I lived in Corner Brook. As some of our viewers may remember, I was in Corner Brook for a couple of years. We went every summer with some of our friends and colleagues. It's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous.
So if you have photos, I don't know the addresses.
NL photos.
There you go.
At cbc.ca.
Or find Ashley on Facebook or on Twitter. Not sure if Ashley's going to be back or if I'm going to be back, but either way, you know what? Somebody will be here with you tomorrow.
Yes,
you won't be by yourself.
We'll find
I
out
promise
tomorrow.
you that.
That's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Bye.